All right, Len, welcome to Tea Time with Olive.
Thank you, Olive.
Here we are. We're at the beautiful house in a beautiful area of Oakland that I think it's my first time coming to this area.
Really?
Yeah.
You haven't been to Temescal yet?
No.
Oh,
This is beautiful. Wow. And me and Saeed, we just went and had lunch and we really enjoyed it. Oh. But we're here to learn more about Len. I met Len during the mail run, I should say, almost a year ago. Over a year ago.
Yep.
Yeah,
it was over
a year ago.
Right.
And
Yes.
so here we are, Len. I asked Len for his bio. I said, send me a little information about yourself and a picture of yourself so I could share it on my Facebook, because I'm known as a queen of social media. So I said, let me share that. So when you send your bio, it was honestly very beautiful. It was so much stuff on there. I was so amazed. But the number one thing is Len actually moved here from Brooklyn, New York, right?
Yeah.
So go ahead and let
Well, that's good. You should have seen the stuff I left off.
Oh, you did?
Oh my gosh,
wow.
Oh yes, it's been a busy 40 some odd years here in Oakland.
Right.
Yes. Yeah, that's interesting. I moved here from Brooklyn actually, and in the early 70s.
Okay.
And I was going to go to I was planning to go to San Francisco,
Right.
but my car didn't have a parking brake.
Oh.
And I just didn't trust the old transmission to hold on those hills.
Right.
So that's really how I ended up in Oakland.
Ended up.
Well, obviously I didn't end up in the Oakland Hills.
Right.
No, actually, interesting enough, this was the first area in Oakland where I lived. It wasn't the first. I lived in Berkeley for a short time, but the first area.
Because that's where you went to school.
Well, actually, I attended Columbia for a couple of years in New York.
All right.
And then I came from Columbia, and then I came out here, and I went to actually I'm a proud graduate of the College of Alameda.
All
Yes.
right.
Okay. I have an AA in automotive. Well, let's see. Did I get an AA in automotive technology? No, I think I got a bunch of credit hours, but I don't think I ever. I'm sure someone could check. I'm sure someone could check on that. Yeah. But
Right.
yes, but I did quite a bit of course hours there.
Okay.
In that one. Later, I did get a degree from there, but not in automotive.
Okay.
Oh yeah, great. I am actually a big believer in vocational training. Oh
Right.
yeah, my gosh. I mean, I would say if there's anything I would love to see Oakland Unified School District do is link that lifelong learning to vocational for a lot of kids.
Right,
Because
right.
I'm someone who.
I mean, you spend most of your life, most of your time in Oakland.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you've done so much different things. You know, you've raised your family
Oh,
here.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yes, and again, I had an auto shop here actually. So I had an auto shop in Temescal back in the 70s.
Wow.
Actually with a couple of partners of mine.
So you did left a few things.
Well, oh yeah.
in your bio.
Oh, it wasn't room. Oh my gosh,
I know,
yes,
it was
yeah.
like,
Yeah. No, you could still see it. Actually, the shop's still there. The bench we built it's right next to homeroom on 40th Street, right? Mm-hmm. So it's I sort of know whereof I speak when I said vocational. There's a lot to be said for vocational training for people to make a decent living and stuff. But so then I had an auto shop for several years, and then I went back to College of Alameda.
Right.
And College of Alameda, and this wasn't in automotive this time. This was in accounting.
Right.
And someone said, "Why did you switch from automotive to accounting?"
Yeah, that's
no, it was perfectly natural. I think I was just probably tired of breathing the fumes.
Right.
Actually, that was the downside to it.
Right.
I didn't show any lasting effects from it, but yeah.
So you switched from
automotive
to
to
account.
which I found perfectly natural. But
I mean, there's a lot of good information that honestly, when I was reading a lot to learn more about Len, there's a lot of information that as a homeowner that not a lot of people know that.
Well, that's when we have to fast forward about 30 years, but that's fine. So some, but in a sense, the experience of running an auto shop gave me a fairly good feeling. Even I was in my early, I was like 20 at the time or something. But yeah, it gives you a fairly good idea of what it's like running a business in Oakland. Really, I mean, we were broken into on the first day, the night we had. Following the day we'd opened, we were broken into and all our equipment was stolen, So I had a fairly good, I had a good idea of what some of the risks are.
So you had some ups and downs.
Oh yeah. I mean,
Just
we recovered
like
fine. We adapted to it, and I'd say, since that day in the early '70s, I've never lost anything significant in a theft. I mean, there've been a pair of shoes here and there, a couple of pieces. Nothing major. It's really maybe it's luck, but it's also.
It is. Well, no, it isn't, because there's so much. Me spending the past 2 years in Oakland, I learned so much about Oakland. It's not always about what you hear on media. I mean, the media, unfortunately, mostly covers the negative. There's so much beautiful stuff, beautiful things happening, businesses, people.
It's always like that. I mean, it's been like that. It was just like the other day. I was reading about prohibition or something. And I was reading about some famous legal scholars who were doing a study of what crime of how many people were really gangsters involved in the alcohol business and what the newspapers said. And it's like, they have to sell newspapers, they have to sell television ads, whatever,
They have to make their business.
They have to, and that's what interests people. I get it.
That's how they get their
They get it. But so yeah, I adapted. I never found Oakland to be, again, there are obviously huge differences in different areas of Oakland, but Temescal in those days wasn't what it is today, and it isn't even what it was 5 years ago, So or 3 years ago for that matter. So yeah, so that's fine. It's kind of it changed. I changed with it, and that's fine. At some point there, I actually lived in the. Even at that, so I lived in Berkeley for a short time, lived in Temescal for a while. Then for several years, I actually lived in that would be the northeast corner, the very most northeast corner of Oakland, which is on Panoramic Hill, right above the UC Greek Theater and stadiums.
That's
beautifully. That's Oakland too. That very top of that hill is Oakland. And
very green.
Yeah, very green. And when it was green, it's very green. And there were very few police. Because the Oakland police, if you ever had to call the Oakland police, they'd say, "Where is that?" And they'd say, "Oh, we have to go through all of Berkeley and go up that hill to get to you." No way, So that was also a good experience for living in Oakland. You got used to not calling the police because they would take a couple hours, 3 hours to get there.
I have experienced that.
Oh, you do? Oh, up on Panoramic?
I called the police. It took about 6 hours.
Oh, really? Oh, well, yeah. That's an interesting one. But that was the so that's Oakland too. A whole different section of Oakland, I would say, for sure. And then so then eventually soon after we got married, Betty and I moved back to Temescal. So we've basically been here in Temescal in this same place since the early my God, since the early '80s, for God's sakes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And
Yeah.
so you've been very involved in District 1, I should say, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, actually, that part of Panoramic, that was District 1 too. Weirdly enough, yes.
Right.
Yes. And the first short stint in there, maybe I was in East Oakland too. So I've actually lived
You
on.
have experience.
Oh yeah,
different
yeah. I
parts
lived
of
on Bona
Oakland.
Street for a while. Yeah. Now, but that's, I have to correct myself about never losing anything in much in a theft after that auto shop. When we were on Bona Street, that's true. We did come. My friends and I was with roommates came by back home, and yep, we ended up chasing some people down the street, which later we thought was, why did we do that?
Have experience.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I know. I'm not. Yeah. I actually enjoyed East Oakland. I would, in a lot of ways,
It has.
I really like
every
it.
what I
like
like
it. Yeah.
Oakland to me is interesting because every, I should say, district
Yes.
has its own culture.
Yeah.
And
Oh
has
yeah.
different cultures, and it's honestly, I have to say, it's very friendly to me.
Yeah, oh,
And
yeah.
it's a very homey style, and it's just, you just feel comfortable in
Oh,
it.
absolutely. I
So sometimes even like, I joke, I always say,
Yeah.
my people, when they say, oh, you're going to Oakland?
Yeah.
You're staying in Oakland? I'm like, because
As if
people
there's
are
some- yeah.
outside, because the only thing they see in the news is negative. I'm like,
Yeah.
it's just like every other city,
Yeah.
it's just a bigger city, and
It
it's complex, and it's
it is.
a lot of actions, I should
No,
say.
it is.
But-
But yeah, my sons learned to take advantage of that. They would when they'd be asked where they're from, they'd say Oakland. This was in the height of the crime years and stuff. And people say, oh, that must be a really tough place. My son said, yeah, that's real. It's really rough there. It's like hey, it's like.
Right.
I mean, it was and it wasn't,
Yeah,
and mostly it was. Mostly it wasn't.
All right, we're
but,
gonna go on a quick short break. We're gonna go ahead and watch a music video, and we'll be right back. So here we go. We're learning about Len, and we're learning about Oakland and all the activities that he is doing right now, and also there's how did he get where he is today. So go ahead and continue, Len.
Well, let's see. So after after finishing up with an accounting AA degree at wonderful College of Alameda,
Right.
really great education.
Mm-hmm.
I went to UC Berkeley, graduated there with more of the same accounting, and then eventually got a master's degree in taxation. There actually is such a thing at Golden Gate, and worked at some big huge accounting firms in the city for several years.
Right.
Then worked in San Leandro for a while, and then went out on my own. And actually started off in Oakland.
Okay.
And I was in Oakland, right on Santa Clara, for several years. Then I moved to Emeryville, and then a few years ago, 2 years ago, I moved back to Oakland and converted the bottom of where we live into that. The theory had always been that I'd have all these grandkids and visiting me all the time, and I need all this room. But it turned out they're all busy with their lives wherever.
Right,
They see
right.
us, but it's sort of like that.
Right.
It's like nah,
only
you come see us. We don't have time to see you, so that's fine.
Are they local?
Let's see here. Both of our sons went to Claremont Middle School,
Okay.
and they both went to Oakland Tech.
Okay.
And that's when people say, then what did they do? I said, oh, they both went to West Point. And they said, oh, you must be ex-military. I said, no. I said, no, I was back in the day, I was definitely not ex-military. In fact, sometimes the people asked this would be retired military generals or colonels. And I'd say, no, I'd say, the only time I was at the Pentagon, I was here, and there were National Guard there, and the Pentagon was there, and they said, "Oh," and they'd have a laugh about it. I'd say, "Yeah," we'd laugh about that. And no, I was not ex-military.
Right.
No, that was my sons wanted to do that. Partially, it was just because they were both interested in world affairs like I was. So, and partially, actually, it was also they wanted to go to a very diverse college.
Right.
And you really couldn't get much more diverse than West Point. It is amazingly diverse place.
Right.
So,
So probably
and that's
one
actually
went
even,
and then the other one just
yeah,
followed.
yeah. It wasn't totally just following. It's really, I mean, the first one was more the policy wonk, interested in international this and that and national policy, and the second one was more he wanted something of the diversity. The second one was both these kids were very much they really enjoyed tech. This was before tech has experienced sort of a
in a different way.
yes, a demographic change. It's actually kind of odd to drive past it.
Right.
And in the day, no, both sons were there. They both played football there. My younger son was class president and school president. They had a great time there. Yeah, they really enjoyed it, and still have many friends from those days.
Right.
But anyway, so they both went on to West Point, and we had some very unpleasant years there. In this age of social media and stuff, it's sort of, it's like there are things you don't want to know about in real time and stuff.
Oh,
like
right,
that.
that's true.
It's really better to get a letter in some ways. So that they're both out, and they're both.
So are they?
Yeah. Oh, so one's local. One's local. Yeah.
Okay.
My younger son Ben is finishing up at Berkeley Graduate Business School. And my oldest son is up in Tacoma. Yeah.
Oh, okay, great. So,
Yep.
like you said, everybody's busy on their life. And
yeah, they're
they don't
busy.
have times to come to visit.
Well, I do get to see my
Right.
my grandddaughters from
I saw. I went through your pictures on social media, and I saw that little cutie, your granddaughter.
Oh yeah. No, they're definitely.
Right.
It's
a joy of life.
Yeah, well, never had daughters. Yeah, it's interesting that granddaughters are sort of hardwired to like their grandfathers. I guess if their grandfathers are total jerks, they don't like them. But anyway, yeah. So that I enjoy that. But yeah. So so that's one of the pleasures for sure, and taking them to take them to local parks and going out for ice cream and things like that.
I should call you official Oaklander. You're an Oaklander.
Oh yeah, no, most definitely. I mean, I haven't been back to New York probably in several years.
Right.
I don't miss New York. I mean, I certainly don't. I miss some family members who still live there, but I don't. And I don't particularly want Oakland to turn into Brooklyn, for God's sakes. I mean, there were parts about Brooklyn which were never good and are not good either. And really, I'm not. Even though at one point I wanted Oakland to get, I wouldn't say gentrified, but I'd say kind of more of a mix of well-to-do people, so that they could afford so they could pay the taxes for the services that everyone needed. I mean, I became very much aware of those kind of issues.
Well, I think that's the topic that's an interesting topic actually that I was interested in doing the interview with you. It's about people don't understand that when you're paying taxes, that there's certain expectation that you have from the city, and the city has that responsibility that also the people that are paying taxes have to use there. But then during the run, I learned so much about people that they give
the run being the mayoral run.
Yeah.
Oh, that run.
That run. So I learned that not a lot of people get involved in what they're asking from the city, but they're always complaining. But if you're not involved, if you're not raising your voice, how is the city gonna, hear your voice?
It's running for public office, or even being a volunteer in political campaign, a local political campaign, is a very eye-opening.
It sure is, yes.
And everyone should do it. I mean, most people say, well, at least volunteer and something, even if all they do is go door to door.
You know what? I honestly, I was a volunteer, but I've learned a lot.
Because if nothing else, people will talk to you, and they'll probably tell you more than you want to hear.
I'm gonna say thank you to all my social media fans for following me, and most of them are honestly, Len, my friends that I made in Oakland are honestly the people that I've met mostly. Just door to door or business to business, or I just run into them. I just met them and we became friends, and they're following me, and that's true.
Really?
A lot of them, they have a voice that they never said anything about it because they don't think anybody listens or cares, and a lot of them didn't vote honestly.
No, I totally understand that,
because
that's
the point of it.
It didn't even, how do I say? I mean, at first I was trying to argue with them a little bit, but then I understand. I mean, these people would tell me, it's like, look, they said, I'm not going to vote. It's not going to make a difference. It's not going to, the game's rigged, this and that. And I understand the powerlessness they feel, and they get disappointed time after time, and they.
But also, I have to say, because being involved in the city, I've learned, one of the things that I've learned, honestly, it's, when you're in the position that, the mayor's position, and especially if a city as big as Oakland and there's so much happening, it's not easy correcting everything overnight. By the time probably the mayor gets close to making some changes, that's the time that her time is up.
it's I don't know if you want to call it a big little city or a little big city.
Yeah.
But and it's also hard to get for people to get their arms around it.
Right.
I sometimes say that people in Oakland who do pay attention to these kind of things pay more attention to international and national government and things than they do local. And you could ask them about these things. They know the names of senators and all the Congress people and all this stuff,
but they don't know much about it.
No, they couldn't tell you who their city council member is. It is at first that sort of shocked me, but I got used to it.
One of the things that I loved about Oakland was that every district have a council member. And these council members, in general, I think they do a pretty good job. It's just the people in that district needs to be more involved with their council member.
They would help to help.
They have to help getting their voice out there so they could hear it.
It is
and
true.
I know a lot of them are. I'm not going to mention any names. I don't want to get in trouble. But I know a lot of them are doing a really good job. So and it's not easy. It's just that the people need to get more involved. That's how
I think on the whole, council members would rather have people involved than not. You know, I mean it probably depends. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they do.
It's politics.
It's politics. Yeah, there's. To some extent, I think once these people get elected, everyone starts out with good intentions and stuff, and once they get elected, they sort of they get sucked up into it, and they get sucked up with the constraints that they've seen, and they start, and this is true for school board, all these, but not just council. And they start thinking, it's almost like it is sort of the inside beltway mentality. The same thing happens even in the law. They start thinking, well, the people who are not involved don't really know what we have to deal with. They don't know the limits we have. They don't know how sure we are on money. They don't know what the contracts are.
All these little things that are out there, really people don't understand.
They don't.
And my point is people being more involved, being in the meetings with the city meetings and this and that is because they get to learn where the money comes from and how much do the council member or let's say
how much
board
do they
member have
what's
the
discretionary
to spend it for that reason, right?
You're right. I mean you're absolutely right. On the other hand, I think there is an element of getting into political office and drinking the Kool-Aid. There's something in there's something in, well, I don't know about perfect. Maybe I should say drink. I would say I don't know. I would say the Kool-Aid that comes out of the water fountain at City Hall is what I'd say, because you see it time and again that the people they start having blinders on what's possible and what isn't. And and I think if they talked more to their constituents and their constituents made it a point to talk to their elected people, school board members as well, it might sort of offset some of that focus. See, the other problem, of course, is that it's universal. But the other problem is that I have found after being involved in many different issues, which I'll briefly touch on, but is that the people who do have the time to do this are generally people who are paid to do that. Whether they're lobbyists, whether they're business people, whether developers, or whether they're city staffers or whatever. I mean, they're it's very, very time consuming to try to make a difference, to even other than sending off an email or something, which is good, but isn't the same as going there and talking to your council person or your school board member and showing up again and showing up at meetings, and very, very different. Whereas the people you do see at these meetings, they're the people who are basically, they have an economic stake in it, and with some there's certainly some big exceptions, but you can see what happens when there enough people get really motivated to show up. You can see all of a sudden, there's good and bad parts to that, but on the whole, I'd say it's a healthy phenomenon to see people get involved. As much as it might be. What's that?
Whatever
it is,
community you are. If
Sure.
it's your, if you're a parent, you should be involved in the board meetings of your school. If you're parent meetings, whatever, because with what's happening with so much crimes in a lot of different cities, not even Oakland, it's because, I believe it's because the roots of it, it's the children. If your kids are going to school, you need to be more involved with the kids at school, with the kids' activities. And if you don't have kids, if you're just a single person, if you're going to school, if you have a business, then you need to be involved in the city meetings. And whatever it's going on, be involved with your community, be involved with your city, because not only learning, but also having a voice of yourself, of what do you want for your community as far as safety, as far as, let's go to tax questions.
Well, yeah,
tax
sure.
reasons,
Hey.
whatever it could be, you gotta be involved.
I would even extend that to even, it would be great to see more people without kids involved in the Oakland school situation, not just as volunteers, but attending board meetings, asking questions, because their lives are affected by the quality of education in many ways.
Right.
Whether it might be crime or caused by joblessness, by kids who aren't trained for the jobs that do exist out there, whether it's just, how attractive a place it is for new businesses to come, whether the whole range of things, and to some extent it would really be great if more people who weren't either just teachers or parents actually got involved in Oakland Unified School District. That because I think it's I think that's a good example of what happens when you don't have when you don't have enough people paying attention to what's going on. They tend to get very inwardly focused on their own budgets, on their own organization, on their own, and as much as they have good intentions, they end up going off track in ways that would not have occurred if a broader spectrum of Oakland residents had been watching. And unfortunately, part of this ties, you talk about social media, I mean, part of this ties into the lack of information about what's going on. I mean, actually how I first got involved in civic affairs as compared to just being a manager for a traveling youth soccer team that brought in a lot of kids from East Oakland, West Oakland.
Ask you about
oh
that.
yeah, no, that was another eye opener.
Right,
getting to know kids from mostly Latino kids from East and West Oakland, and I mean that was something we were always very. It was always important to us raising our kids that they did interact with kids who were from different economic and racial and cultural backgrounds. So and soccer actually was perfect for that because they were they were in there with all different kinds of kids, and and that worked out great for all of us. But anyway, what I was trying to get at was that the lack of information that people have is part of the problem why they don't get involved. Even if they wanted to get involved, it's so difficult. I mean, just trying to go to a city council meeting, because I mean you could watch it on the streaming video. This is true.
You know what, Len? I did a clip.
Yeah.
I did a clip because there was a meeting at the city council. There was the meeting during budget.
Okay.
I did a clip. I don't know if you watched my clip or not.
No.
It got over 100,000 hits on it. Because what happened was there was a meeting. So I show up to the meeting. I show up and there's nobody there. So I asked the security guard, I said, I have the paper, I have the schedule. He goes, oh, it's not on the list. I guess there's no meeting. So I go to one of the council members' office. There's no meeting. I go to the mayor's office. Oh, we rescheduled that for next week. I'm like, so how is the people supposed to? So I walk outside.
They figured, well, everyone who was going to be there knew anyway.
Right?
It's like,
so I walk
that's
outside, and there's about, let's say, 10, 12 people or everybody's
waiting.
Lost, like, where's the meeting?
Where's the meeting,
they
right.
changed the meeting, but
Right.
the people didn't know.
Well, how I sort of got, well, okay, so there's this whole thing about, right, how do you get it? So if by chance you want to get more involved in your city, yes, there are plenty of volunteer,
Right.
and I'm not, I would never belittle volunteer activities as a way of making the city a better place. It absolutely is critical, and Oakland's always had a lot of volunteers.
Right.
But there's another part of that, which is people have to spend a little bit of their devote a little bit of bandwidth, much more than they have, to paying attention to what's going on at City Hall, what's going on in the school board. Because if they don't, there are people who will, and they may not have.
Well, the thing is, the people have to keep an eye on the system.
They do.
That's how I see it.
And they do, because otherwise they're going to go off, and they'll be influenced by what they think's important, which may not really be what everyone else thinks important. And so how I first really started looking out just beyond being involved in volunteer stuff. Well, I think I was treasurer at Temple Beth Abraham. I was involved in youth soccer, which was great, but it was through, I don't know if it's not social media, but there was an early, back in, what was it, 2007 or something like that. There was a website that a woman who's still around, Eka Schneider, had set up, called A Better Oakland. And this was the first.
Better Oakland, I think it's still.
No. It's up, but it's just archived.
It's not active.
No, it's active. Right. But if you look on abetteroakland.com, you'll see what the discussions were. This was back, said 2006, 7, somewhere around then. Right. 8. Anyway, and these were. I don't know. I'm sure there was a couple of hundred of us who were trying to look beyond just being, good residents, and just, and try to look into sort of bigger picture and stuff. And there was even shall we say, a quantitative bent to it, mostly because Eka, I think, was a former math major. She would actually look at budget stuff and numbers and question things about, crime statistics, all these kind of things. And really before then, I mean, I'm sure that kind of stuff had gone on in Oakland, but it was scattered here and there. It was not in any way and it certainly wasn't available to normal people who weren't in a particular in-group. I'm sure there've always been good government groups. I mean, I know there have. I mean, back to the 1900s. I mean, there's a whole tradition of that in Oakland. And I am somewhat of an Oakland history buff also, actually, which is interesting. There's some things that repeat themselves. Oh yeah, what do they say? If you don't know history, you're doomed to repeat. Oh, absolutely.
It's not just to say.
Yes,
it really is true.
There are
things. In Oakland.
Oh, absolutely. Well, yeah, because there's an amazing. There's a really good Oakland history Facebook page, by the way.
I think I have it.
Oh yeah, I think you're on it.
It's
amazingly
very
good.
Interesting.
Yes, amazingly
People
good.
put different stories.
Yes.
And I get my my information about Oakland from that.
It's
a very good page.
And it's fairly, and it's quite accurate. Usually the good information corrects the incorrect information. Yep. Now, I personally wish that it got a little more into political history, because I think kind of.
You could be the one.
Well, I've been kind of nudging them that way, as well as just history of like pictures and nostalgia and stuff like that.
Yeah, somebody just recently put a picture of an old house that somebody found that was there. Did you see that?
Which is great. I mean, my auto shop used to be right down the block from that on 40th Street, so I found that interesting. But there's certainly things to be learned from from mistakes and good things and bad things from the past. And yeah, it's worth doing. But anyway, so I would say out of all of us who were involved in A Better Oakland, I'm trying to think who actually ever even worked it up to run for office. I think the only person is the woman who's on BART from this district.
From this district. I don't
Well,
know
yeah. Who is our BART person? She is the only, let me think, did anyone else ever run for political office who was active
and everybody
on that?
was from Oakland.
Oh yeah, everyone on that was from Oakland, absolutely. They tended to be downtown Oakland people more than disproportionately,
Right.
because it was sort of downtown Oakland, Lake Merritt, more so than, there were some East Oakland people, and there were a few Temescal people, but it was mostly downtown, yeah. And some of the people for sure are still very active. I mean,
Right.
I think one of them's transportation on Libby Schaff's staff.
Oh, great.
And I think, and then there's always Max Allstat, who's very active at talking at City Hall stuff and things like that. Yeah, and there were several other people too, but I think the only ones of us who actually ran for office who were active on that would have been me and that other one. And initially I didn't run for office. I got active with mismanaging the campaign for Patrick McCullough.
Oh,
Patrick,
okay.
did you ever meet Patrick?
I
Oh, of
sure
course,
did,
from the mayor.
yes,
You know him from the
yeah.
well.
Yes,
Before
yes.
he ran for mayor, he He was the first person who challenged the city councilwoman at the time, who was Jane Bruner. She had run unopposed at least for one or two repeat sessions there. She had been opposed once, I think, and so he ran, and he was an interesting guy. I from being active on this social, there were a bunch of us were talking about, oh, this could be done better, and someone should look at the budget here, and why are they, why is the crime so high there, and why, how could police be used in a more efficient way? We were mostly concerned with those kind of good government things. We certainly weren't spending our time at that point looking at. At the time, I remember thinking crime was very, very high all over Oakland at the time. I remember talking to an acquaintance of mine saying, gosh, isn't there anyone who's willing to run for city council against our local council person who's been there for years, and I think could stand to have some of the.
Is that the District 2 or 1?
No, District 1. District 1.
Okay.
So he said, oh yeah, call Pat McCullough up, and I said, Pat McCullough, who's that? And I said, oh, I remember him. He's that Irish guy who wounded someone on his front lawn, some young drug dealer. And I said that's nuts. No, some white guy who shot a young black guy on his lawn. This guy doesn't have a chance, snowball's chance in hell running in Oakland for office. And then my acquaintance laughed, said, no. He says, meet Patrick. So I met Patrick, and he was definitely not a rosy, red-cheeked young Irishman. It was very funny. It was very funny, and I grilled him extensively about what had happened, and when he explained the background and explained how his what exactly had happened, and it's like it's like it really, and the police his family had been threatened, with
Right.
deadly harm because he was trying to get drug dealers out of the neighborhood.
Right.
And
He was
his
actually doing the right thing.
yeah, oh, he actually was. I mean, I'm not saying. I mean, look, what it came down to was the police said. He said, "Well, can't you protect me?" And the police said, "No."
No.
And they said, "No." And he said, "They said you have to move." And he said, "But I don't want to move, and I can't afford to move." And so it's when that was the background to it, and the kid was not seriously injured. He recovered just fine, and it was a terrible thing, but that was it. It wasn't something that I saw. To me, it didn't mean he was this terrible person who was But in any event, and I liked his positions on some other things. Mm-hmm. So I helped mismanage his campaign, and that was an eye opener.
Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and go on a short break again, and then we'll be right back. But we're gonna continue with the story. I think you're involved still involved in District 1. So we're gonna come back and we're gonna continue with that story.
This is one of our compositions we're proud to play. Serenade to a Cuckoo.
Okay, here we are again. So the stories are very warm and interesting about Oakland. Me being so interested in politics, and Len gets me excited.
About politics.
We fall
Let's get
off
this
the
straight.
subject here. So what I really wanted to learn more on this meeting today was about tax on homeowners here in Oakland. So do you want to give us some information on that?
So
I know that's
I'm going to
his
have to
favorite
skip
subject.
over a bunch of it. But yeah, so as part of my, and yeah, give me a timeout if I spend more than 2 minutes on it.
Right.
So anyway, so yes, I am a CPA. I mean, I
Right.
do all my daytime and part of my nighttime
Right.
work is always for the last umpteen years has been
Right.
spent crunching numbers and advising people on
Right.
financial matters. You know,
Absolutely.
a lot of it having to do with taxes, and
Right.
some of these people were the billionaire next door, and some
Right.
of them were the schlepper next door who could,
Right,
you know,
right. That's
a very diverse group,
We
shall
never
we
know,
say,
yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and really the difference between the billionaire next door and the schlepper when it comes down to paying tax, they all hate paying taxes, and they
Right.
you know, it's funny, and it's like it's not what you think necessarily.
Right.
But anyway, so so I was always involved in that. Of course, that's how I made my living. That's how I help people, and I enjoyed that. I still do enjoy helping people with how to solve those kind of problems. When it came to the civic area, even though initially I'd been just a volunteer with you know, kind of, as we said, you know, soccer, you know, that kind of stuff. And then when I was managing Patrick's campaign, you ended up talking to people. You know, as you say, you started learning about what kind of services people, you know, they never asked for, but they really like, and those kind of things. And then you hear, oh, it's money, we can't pay the cops more, or we'd have to cut library hours or things like that. And started the discussions on a Better Oakland were things that were saying, well, you know, they're kind of, everyone kind of skews the numbers to back up what their conclusion is,
Right.
you know, and it's not, and one of the things that we actually early on back then was someone in East Oakland who was pointing out that the Oakland property tax rate, the percentage rate, is actually the highest in the immediate Bay Area. It was the darndest thing. I looked at it, I said, my God, you're right. I mean,
I was looking at
was
Berkeley
like,
and San
yeah,
Francisco and Oakland.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Oakland, no, Oakland's, it's called the ad valorem rate, and it's the rate times the assessed value of the property. And it doesn't matter whether it's residential or,
Right.
it is substantially higher than San Francisco or Piedmont
Right.
or Berkeley
Right.
or Fremont.
Mhm.
And it is funny. It's like none of us noticed it, probably. I don't think I ever had any clients notice it or mention it because housing values were so low in Oakland relative to other places, relative
Right,
to Piedmont
right.
and San Francisco and Berkeley. They didn't really notice it. And then someone started explaining it to me. This was a guy who he was like third generation East Oakland or something, and he had dug into it a little bit, and he was explaining, and I dug into it some more, and we found out the reason Oakland's percentage rate is higher goes back to some really stupid decisions that Oakland made before Prop 13 and after Prop 13, but basically decisions that had to do with pension plans and how they invested the money and how they calculated the pensions, and essentially they lost so much money and it was so expensive that they ended up issuing bonds to kind of cover the shortfalls. And
But
the
you're
bond,
getting into my
right,
question,
and the
yes,
bonds
go.
were pre-Prop 13, and Prop 13, everyone, you know, blames Prop 13 for everything, all the shortages of money, but this is one which they can't
Is that
blame
when you said something about when they're borrowing monies, the city's borrowing monies from investors, right?
Well, that's what bonds are. They're
Right.
basically they're going, and whether it's to build a new sports stadium or whether it's to build fix up schools or whether it's to fund a pension plan, which is an unusual use of bonds usually bonds, traditionally bonds were meant, they were long-term obligations. It was a loan from investors to the city, and most people didn't. Most residents, when they went to approve these at the polls, didn't realize that there's some kind of tax involved with it, because it has to be repaid. And they're usually dedicated
Or
taxes.
maybe those fine, tiny lines on the bottom of
They,
the
yeah.
page.
No, they didn't.
that
They
didn't
wouldn't
pay.
have. They thought they would just say, "Okay, yeah, should we borrow the money? This sounds like a good cause,
Right,
whatever."
right.
You know, it's like, you know, and it's not. It wasn't clear to them really what they were being asked to do.
Right.
Except they said, "Oh yeah, this is probably going to take a little money, but it'll be over 30 years. What's the big
Right.
deal?" But there were
But
there were
what
consequences.
can they do anything about
Oh, and now, well.
to
Yeah.
it?
Well, what they should have done was they should have asked, well, why do we have to borrow? Well, it's one thing. There's two things. Well, one is if money is being borrowed to build things,
Right.
and that's a perfectly reasonable
Right.
use to match long-term
Right.
borrowings with things that.
Right.
Buildings that are going to last a long time. That makes perfect sense. To use bonds to pay for something you should have been setting the money aside all along. That's crazy.
Right.
And I can see, and I still see how we had to do that maybe, but but the process, they didn't bother explaining that to people, and they didn't explain to people, well, there were alternatives such as cutting spending on other things so that we could catch up with investment mistakes, etc.
Right.
They didn't bother doing it, and more importantly, there were no newspapers around saying, well, look, folks, you know, I mean, yeah, some of the Oakland Trib stuff in the most recent years might have said that stuff,
Right.
but it certainly wasn't saying it back then.
Right,
And
right.
and when people actually read the Tribune, you know, and might have made a difference. And the Chronicle never even paid attention to Oakland. So anyway, so what can they do now? Well, now essentially it's a matter of paying close attention, or at least making your council member or your school board member accountable for how the money is spent, and not just assuming that because they have all these well qualified, you know, highly paid, you know, the consultants and stuff
Right.
watching over bond programs and things like that, that the money is necessarily spent appropriately. A really good example would probably be Oakland Unified School District, even more so than the city, because the city actually has quite a few people watching over how it spends bond proceeds. At least, again, if it's bond proceeds that affects people's daily life, like the work around Lake Merritt and stuff, oh yeah, there were a lot of people watching that like a hawk.
Right.
If it was stuff that's being used to how to catch up with deficits
Right.
in retirement. No. There was only two of us who showed up to speak before the city council the last time they borrowed money on this, which actually I have to say turned out to be financially a good decision, but that was dumb luck. It could have gone the other way, you know.
Yes, what if it
Yeah.
didn't?
I mean, it
Yes.
was just pure dumb luck. But there were only two of us who showed up. You talk about showing up at a meeting and no.
Right,
Oh no, it was amazing. It was like here was some $100 million decision, or $200 million. I forget now what it was.
Right.
And how many people to borrow money? How many of us showed up? Two of us, and I wasn't able to make the final meeting, and only one of us showed up. It was the funniest thing that you know.
And look at all that money, and
Right.
again, people don't have enough information.
They don't. No.
And the system keeps the people really busy with that 8 hours, 9 to 6,
No,
and a lot
you
of
can't.
meetings.
Oh,
you know,
absolutely.
A lot of meetings, I
Happen
believe
during
that
the
it
day.
should happen, either, after work. It has to, so people have time to come, or even on the weekends if it's possible.
I think you're right, because
Yeah.
Bayer is an expensive place to live.
Right.
Most people don't work just 8-hour days,
Right.
and
And the
I agree.
traffic really,
Yep, traffic
so
doesn't
10
help,
hours a day is gone,
Yep.
so they
But
can't
it is
make
easy to
it.
park at City Hall, and it's actually very easy to park
Right.
at, or take it's easy to take public
Right.
transportation to City Hall. It's not easy to take public transportation to the Oakland Unified School District meetings.
Right.
And that really is where I think people need to be putting more attention, regardless of if they have kids. There's a huge amount of money flowing through there now, flowing through the various construction projects, massive amounts of money. And as far as I'm concerned, it is not being watched over. It's not being properly supervised by a broad enough range of people. And if you've seen any of that stuff in like the Oakland Post about how they appoint someone to watch over these projects who has a contract to watch over the projects, it's like my God, you're paying the person who's in charge. It's
Probably
like, no.
a person from a different city.
Yeah,
to
you need
come
someone,
to watch
or at
over
least
the,
someone different. You don't
Right.
want the person watching over the person who's the same person.
the
You know?
same person.
Yes,
right,
yeah, that's
right.
nuts. Anywhere in San Francisco, they'd laugh you out of City Hall if you did something. But in the Oakland Unified School District, that's like, oh yeah, that's not a conflict of interest. Next, you know. So,
Right,
yeah.
right. So, should we
Oh,
go
taxes.
ahead and let's we have about 2 minutes, two or 3 minutes. Let's
Oh.
cover
My
the
taxes.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so what can you do about taxes?
Right.
Death and taxes. Nothing you can do about it. Not really. I mean, the answer is the first important thing is, of course, if there are taxes of which you can do nothing about, but for various kinds of property and parcel taxes, and those you have to at least make sure the money is spent appropriately, efficiently, effectively, not wasted on consultants
Right.
and done in a way that was the intent of why voters passed for it. Then it came to my attention, and I wasn't the person who found out, was it came to my attention that there was a total of about over $600,000 per property owner of parcel taxes each year for which there were at least partial exemptions for. And most of the exemptions are for low-income homeowners. It's true, but there was also an exemption of $120 a year for anyone who was any homeowner who was 65 or older, regardless of what their income was. Okay. So there was a senior who brought that to my attention, who tried to apply for it, and she was told by OUSD, who had the exemption, oh, too late. The deadline was June 30th. You can apply next year. And I was saying, that's odd. I mean, in any normal tax situation, there's statutes of limitations. It's sure you have to file your income tax return on April 15th.
Right.
You can extend it October, but you can still, if you have a refund claim, you have so many years after that date to still file it, right? I said there must be something like that with property, with these parcel taxes too. So I was blogging about it in a lot of different places. I wrote something in the Oakland Post about it, and then there was a barrage of seniors, I think, who used social media, basically sent emails to their school board members, and the next thing you know, by gosh, and I spoke before a school board meeting on this too. Right. Next thing you know is Oakland Unified School District said, we are indefinitely extending the deadline for June 30th for seniors.
Just for seniors.
I said, wait a minute, what about
the rest of it?
What about the low income people?
Right,
Right.
So
then I started looking at the low income stuff, and I'm saying, my God, there was one there. There was a low income one for that particular tax, and that was a new tax.
Right.
And then there was a low income one for schools that was higher than that. It was like $195 a year that anyone who was low income would qualify for if they were a homeowner, and that had been going on for decades.
So
well,
is it done? The deadline?
No. Oh well, of course. You see now. So that's the thing. It's like, well, first thing I looked in was does anyone know about this?
Right.
So I would talk to people, and now this is not just OUSD. It's the city. Then I found out by talking to actually a council member that, he said, you do know there is something like this, that the city has parcel taxes with exemptions too. And it's funny, I mean, I never looked at my parcel tax bill. It never occurred to me, well, I mean, I wasn't low income, and I'm not senior,
people,
so I didn't even look. But the
Right.
point is that it didn't even occur to me. But I did happen to look on my thing and notice that the homeowner's exemption wasn't there, and I found out a lot of people also didn't have that anyone was entitled to that who was a homeowner, because if they had ever refinanced or put it in the name of a living trust or something, it could easily have been dropped off. That's not a lot of money, but it's still $100 a year.
Right.
And so anyway, so that came to mind, and I bought anyway. So the point is, all these seniors barraged OUSD, and OUSD said, okay, we're indefinitely extending it for seniors. And I said, well, what about the low income people? And that's where right now, and then I did the same thing with the city. So I wrote another article for op-ed for the Oakland Post. So where we're at now is, I wouldn't call it a standoff, but I'd say it's sort of in limbo.